Coming up, the Kraken have the defending champs on the brink of elimination. This is Locked On Game to Game NHL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NHL. Local experts join us to go over the matchups from last night's playoff games in the NHL. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. The Panthers scored in overtime to win in Boston for the second time in this series. Florida, though, still needs to win 2 more in a row to avoid elimination. Our Locked On hosts from both teams recap their dramatic finish in Game 5.
It is, in fact, true that cats have multiple lives. What is up, guys? This is Armando Velez from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And the Florida Panthers defeat the Boston Bruins on the road by a final score of 4-3. Their second road win in this 7-game series. And the Florida Panthers, even though they never trailed, the Boston Bruins were dominating this game. And Sergei Bobrovsky was coming up huge in this one. During this game, myself and a whole bunch of Florida Panther fans were just waiting for the shoe to drop for the Boston Bruins to take a grasp on that lead. But Sergei Bobrovsky coming up big as well. Both of the Sams coming up big with a goal on their own. Anthony Duclair getting the first one. And the Panthers were quick to get to the pucks at times, especially on that final goal where Carter Verhaeghe was racing towards the Boston zone. Linus Ullmark turns it over, and then Carter Verhaeghe finds Matthew Tkachuk, and then Matthew Tkachuk knocks it into the open net to give the Florida Panthers a 4-3 win and forcing a Game 6. Since January, this team has had their backs against the wall with being up to 9 points behind for the final wild card spot. And the Florida Panthers have been playing that playoff hockey since that time, and it proved then, and it proved now that this team is never out of it, no matter what. And not saying that the Florida Panthers will, in fact, win this series, but they give themselves a chance night after night. And the Florida Panthers will be going back to Sunrise in their own barn in front of their home fans to hopefully redeem themselves for what happened in games 3 and 4. So to listen to my recap of this 4-3 win for the Florida Panthers over the Boston Bruins, make sure to listen to my next episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Your team every day.
Catastrophic turnovers killed the Boston Bruins once again in a Game 5 overtime loss to the Florida Panthers. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and with a chance to clinch a first-round series win on home ice, the Boston Bruins literally gave it away, highlighted by a misplay from Linus Ullmark in overtime that led directly to a Matthew Tkachuk game-winning goal. Now, Patrice Bergeron made his playoff debut in this one. Looked a little rusty in the dot, but played pretty well overall. Still, the inspiration that came from having their captain was not enough to get it done. Bruins never led at any point in this game, and will have to regroup, travel to Florida, and attempt to close this series out on Friday night. Catch all the latest on Locked On Boston Bruins, your team every day.
The Seattle Kraken are on the verge of a big first-round upset after winning Game 5 against the defending champion Avalanche. Now up 3-2 in the series, Locked On Kraken goes over a big win, while Locked On Avalanche looks at how to avoid an early exit.
Oh, how sweet it is. Game 5, and the Seattle Kraken get a 3-2 victory over the Colorado Avalanche, which means we set ourselves up to win the series come Friday. Now, how we got here is fascinating. For the first time ever in the series, neither team scored, but particularly we, the Seattle Kraken, did not score in the first frame. That's all right, because Morgan Geekie got the party started in the second period. The Colorado Avalanche would counter with a response goal, and then with a response goal of his own, the rookie, the AHL Rookie of the Year, who gets the call up from Coachella Valley, none other than Ty Cartier, gets the goal, the second goal for the Seattle Kraken. Yanni Gourde gets the third and game winner on a splendiferous tip goal. 1 win away, Seattle hockey fans. And it's coming back to Climate Pledge Arena. We're going to get more into this game and also our live watch along, which is why I'm wearing this bucket hat. If you missed the story, you can watch the playback, but we will catch you on Thursday's episode of Locked On Kraken.
All right, so the Colorado Avalanche on the brink of elimination. They lose this one to the Kraken 3-2 in Game 5. They go back to Seattle for Game 6, where obviously Seattle going to look to end this thing. It's not over, obviously, but you don't have a good vibe right now for what the Avalanche are putting out there.
Unfamiliar territory with their backs against the wall, a series potentially to be closed out, and you don't feel confident with the effort that the Avalanche are putting forth on the ice. The shots are there, but nothing of quality.
Yeah, and you do obviously get Cale Makar back for Game 6, and that is a difference maker. But is it just too much with what the Avs don't have out there right now and with what Seattle is bringing? Is it too much of a ask, too much of a mountain to climb to try to win 2 games in a row against Seattle? I mean, I wouldn't put anything beyond this Avalanche team, but it is going to be a challenge.
That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NHL. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. It's the playoffs. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NHL and your favorite teams' Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.